Hi, everyone. A.B. Stoddard with the Bulwark. I'm back with Bill Kristol, editor-at-large and co-author of Morning Shots, and an all-around terrific guy and my good friend. And we are pumped today. We were last together a week ago talking about how short this little meeting would be if the debate was terrible, and we were nervous as all get out. I blabbed all night on our live stream about it, Bill, so I'm going to ask you what your reaction is.
Yeah, well, great to be with you, AB, and it's a good morning. I would say like the sigh of relief that you can hear across the country is coming from you in Maryland and me in Northern Virginia. But actually, it's more than a sigh of relief, really. That is a reasonable reaction sometimes to political events, and like you dodged a bullet and did what you had to do to get by. But she did a lot more than that, and I was wrong a little bit about what her strategy should be, I think, and how well she could pull it off. I was more in the you got to speak to the American public. She did that well, and lay out some of the plans and reintroduce yourself. She did that pretty well. I think that's the one thing she probably will have to do a little more of in the next few weeks. But I was dubious that she could just get under his skin and provoke him without getting into sort of pig wrestling match with him, so to speak. It's a little unfair to the pigs, but you know what I mean, the mud wrestling match, and hurt herself. But she was very deft at the getting under his skin side of things without, taking too much time from her own explanation of things. I thought the instance, and I think Andrew Egger mentioned this in Morning Shots, what was the first set of questions was the economy, a couple of questions, then abortion. So one good for Trump, presumably, then one very good for her. She did very well on the abortion rights issue. And then immigration. So another one for Trump. So all the MAGA world bleating about how ABC was unfair or something. Two of the first three questions were absolutely Trump's top issues, and so I don't think that was good for Trump. And she gave a good answer on immigration. She went first.
The United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill, which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime, trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem.
Sort of playing defense, but, I was for this bipartisan bill in Congress, and Trump blew it up, and she explained it, actually, I thought, pretty well. It's kind of complicated to explain, but she kind of made clear what she was talking about. And then she sort of out of the blue, honestly, just inserted, incidentally, it's really amazing. Trump's crowds are just, or his crowds, however she said it to him. Maybe she said your crowd. She looked at him a lot and said you a lot, actually, right? Are just, they're not what they once were, and the people leave early, and he's really lost the kind of his pizzazz, I don't know how she put it, something like that.
And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you.
And it really was kind of ridiculous. It was gratuitous, but it had nothing to do with it. Particularly, she didn't even pretend to link it to immigration. She obviously just wanted to get this into an early answer. And he couldn't resist. This was he had 120 seconds to really go after her on immigration. And she hadn't really addressed the borders czar question. She hadn't really defended Biden's policies. Why didn't you do this stuff 3.5 years ago, which I think David Muir might have asked. And he could have just, I think he could have done some damage on that. Then there would have been a follow-up, and he could have kept going. And instead he took I'd say more than half his 2 minutes, claiming that his crowds were great and never been better. And
first, let me respond as to the rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies.
It's just one example of how deftly, with really one sentence, 10 seconds of her time done in a nice way. Well, nice isn't quite the word, but in an unobtrusive way, maybe that's where provoked 60, 80, 90 seconds of him going on with the crest. And then he was so rattled or so worked up that for the rest of the immigration answer, it wasn't actually about the border. It was about the cats being eaten in Springfield, Ohio.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country. I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from television.
But the people on television saying their dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Totally blew his biggest, what I would say would be a chance to get the debate off in a pretty good way for him. And after that, she just went from strength to strength. What did you think?
Yeah, I thought obviously that was planned and well planned,
right?
But it wasn't. It was pretty elegant, I thought, because she said, "I'm going to invite you to I'm going to do something unusual. I'm going to invite you to a Trump rally. I'll tell you what he does there. He complains. He talks about grievances. He talks about himself." And the crowds, they get tired, they're bored, and they're exhausted, and they start to leave. And then she says, "You know what he doesn't do? He doesn't talk about you."
Yeah.
And that was just, I'm sorry, that was just genius. And it was a way, obviously, to divert him, and it was completely successful. But in addition to, I said this last night, and I want to make the point again. I mean, in addition to the fact that she had so many things she had to do. Okay. This debate was about Kamala Harris. It was not about Donald Trump. Everyone goes in and says, if he just shows up like a sentient being, and I thought he knew the first 30 minutes is the trick. I thought he would be nice. I thought he might smile at her. I thought he might call her the vice president. I thought he would just try to be normal for 30 minutes, knowing that's really all he had to do. She had to play perfect defense. She had to counterattack. She had to attack. She had to fact check. She had to introduce herself to the public who didn't follow the convention, doesn't know what she stands for. A critical gap she has to make up in swing states. She had so many tasks, Bill. And she had a plan, and she prepared, and she executed, and she came off like a real person. And I thought, she has had some canned moments in debates in the past that really were clunky. None of that there. But she put in the work. Credit to Kamala Harris for working her ass off to put in the work. And they're complaining about the moderators. You know what? If she tried to steal an election, she would have been asked about that too. But B, she was asked about Israel. She was asked about the border. She was asked about her domestic position flip-flops. She was asked about and she was ready, right? All the things that would have been like, a bad moment where she could have gotten flustered or been unprepared. She was ready. And she exuded confidence and competence and capability. And so it's hilarious to watch them moan and groan that he was asked tough fact checks on his lies, or that she got softball questions. She was asked every hard issue that was going to be tough for her, and she was prepared. And I've never seen anything like it, is the way that I feel. Hillary Clinton, I believe, won those debates, Bill. She's very comfortable in policy. She really likes it. She's very substantive, and she was, very fluent and comfortable talking about that stuff in 2016, but she's not charming. And she didn't really have a strategy the way that Harris did. And I thought it was just stunning.
And very well executed. I really want to emphasize that, having been a little bit close to a couple of these debates over time. It's one thing to have your team come up with, or you work with them and you come up with a few good lines, but they do sometimes seem clunky when delivered, or you don't have a chance to deliver them, where you sort of half don't remember. You don't have any notes. You're there for 90 minutes, huge pressure. You got to remember 180 different things. But a couple other times, she very deftly delivered what were clearly prepared lines, but didn't come out as terribly canned or prepared. I thought introducing John McCain is a special warm spot for me, obviously, for you, I think.
Me too.
I will never forget the early morning hours when it was up for a vote in the United States Senate, and the late, great John McCain, who you have disparaged as being, you don't like him, you said at the time, because he got caught. He was an American hero. The late, great John McCain, I will never forget that night, walked onto the Senate floor and said, no, you don't. No, you don't. No, you don't get rid of the Affordable Care Act. You have no plan. And what the Affordable Care Act has done is eliminate the ability of insurance companies to deny people with pre-existing conditions.
In the context of Obamacare and the health care bill, not in the context of foreign policy particularly, and reminiscing, since she was a senator then when he came to the floor already ill from the cancer that would kill him, and did the famous thumbs down on repeal of Obamacare, or partial repeal of Obamacare. She told the story nicely, because people don't remember that necessarily, so she had to sort of explain it. But in telling it, she called him the late, great John McCain. And she's in passing, and did it, as I say, not without making a big deal of it. But if you were, a Republican or an independent who liked McCain, suddenly it was like, gee, Kamala Harris really respects and liked John McCain. So it's almost beyond the substance of the healthcare vote and more of an appeal to McCain supporters, as she also obviously invoked Cheney. So she was and then the other thing I thought that was very deftly done, again, clearly intended, was she was waiting for the moment, and Trump said something, I can't remember, attacking the Biden-Harris administration, associating Harris with Biden very much. And she said, I'm not Joe Biden.
Clearly, I am not Joe Biden, and I am certainly not Donald Trump. And what I do offer is a new generation of leadership for our country.
And then she added, to take the edge off in a sense, of course, I'm not at all Donald Trump, or something like that. And then she went on to attack Trump, basically. But she got that sentence out, I'm not Joe Biden, which is so important, I think, as part of her broader strategy and effort to make sure that she was not mostly running as Joe Biden's vice president, but as a new face with a fresh agenda for the future and so forth. So again, both cases, she did it deftly, I thought. And so the execution matters. And as you say, that was, she practiced a lot, I gather. They did 3 full-scale debates. Philippe Brains played Trump, and apparently was very aggressive and really didn't. Sometimes I found this problem when I was in government, in politics, it's hard to really be nasty to your boss, or to the vice president of the United States in this case, and, play Trump properly. And apparently a lot of what he sort of they anticipated a lot of the way Trump would behave. And so she wasn't surprised or rattled when Trump behaved the way he was, and she was able to, deliver these lines so well. So she's a better candidate than I expected her to be, considerably better.
As you said, it is really hard to remember all your plans because you're just thinking of so many things, right? The things that I described: counterattack, fact check, defend. I mean, it's a lot, and then fill in. Talking to the voters, you, and she did that so well. Everything about last night from her was so intentional. Like everything, that it was such an intricate plan, and the execution was so flawless. And what I loved, look, a lot of Democrats said, don't get into the mud with him because then you'll be a pig. Don't get down with him. And that decision, right, of that's a straddle. She had to go there. But I love that she was so tough without coming off as smug. She said, they can manipulate you. Yeah. I mean, she went at him.
Yep.
She went at him. Anne Applebaum tweeted it today saying she landed in Warsaw and this is like flying across Europe. Very popular soundbite. Why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up Ukraine? Because he never said that he wanted Ukraine to win.
Why don't you tell the 800,000 Polish Americans right here in Pennsylvania how quickly you would give up for the sake of favor and what you think is a friendship with what is known to be a dictator who would eat you for lunch?
They planned and wrapped together a Polish-American voter in Pennsylvania Putin punch and landed it perfectly. This is some artful stuff, in my opinion.
No, I totally agree. So, yeah, it was good. It was a really high-class, high-quality performance. And one aspect of high-quality performance, people are separating it. Well, she did pretty well, and he did awfully, and I myself So that was my initial kind of thing. But then when you think about it for a minute, one reason he did awfully is that she helped provoke him to do awfully. So I think you have to upgrade her from doing pretty well to doing really quite well, because to do that and land most of what you want to land on your own behalf, that would be the one thing I think she still has to do, is some of the economic message, the middle class message, answering in more detail in a way, and more some of the where she is now on the issues where she was on the left in 2019. But that can be done in speeches. I think that can be done subsequently, and she can lay it out and sort of check that box. It's more of a media concern maybe than voter concern, I think, in some ways. But you do need, the media will nag her on that until she has a slightly longer explanation of why she changed her mind on fracking and why she, what she meant when she said certain things in 2019. But I think, again, that can be done in a speech and sort of in a way put to bed. That was, anyway. So yeah, it's very impressive.
So let's talk about what's next. What should we start worrying about? They raised $2 million every 10 minutes last night. She fired up a lot of people, and Sarah Longwell's focus groups this morning show that people think she won the debate and that the complaints about the moderators don't fly with undecided. So it's really looking good for the small universe of people that she is trying to convince. I think you're right. She needs to fill in more policy stuff, because you really can't, that requires so much repetition, right? Joe Biden's record of accomplishments is still largely unknown to the average American because he could not sell them.
Yeah.
So when you think about her task this month and next, what do you recommend?
So, yeah, one question I had is, she could win the debate, but not change many voters' minds. And there's a small universe of voters, as you say. But it does seem, I talked to someone who has seen the results of a focus group, several focus groups done by a big Democratic super PAC with dials and the whole thing about what they liked and didn't like. And the good news on that is they liked a lot of what Harris did. Trump still had some edge on the economy and on being strong. She didn't just wipe that out in one evening, but the edge wasn't as great as it had been. And when asked who you're now inclined to vote for, these are undecideds or very soft Harris or Trump supporters. They moved to something like 45 to 20. 45% moved were for Harris now. They've been evenly split before. 20% for Trump, still 30% undecided. So we're not talking like 80% of those voters. So one shouldn't overstate it. But if she could do that, if she could win 2 or 3 to 1 of the voters who were in play, obviously that she's in very good shape. Though that will still only put her up 3 points or 4 points. It's not going to put her up 10. So people need to have expectations under control. But I'm very curious to see, and I would really want to see some movement on voters' ballot intentions, voting intentions. Not just, gee, I like that debate. But there have been times when people like debate performances and it didn't really change much about the way people would vote. They just didn't care because they're voting for other reasons that have nothing to do with someone's making a clever point or seeming a little irritable. So I think that's one point. I would say, she needs. One, two. I think she can coast on this. Coast isn't quite the right word. She can ride this wave for a while. It's a very big debate. It's got to have been viewed. I don't know if we know the numbers yet, but what do you think? 50, 60, 70 million people?
Yeah, I don't know them either, but it's also, I'm sure it was well watched, but it will travel further than most debates do in terms of the clips.
Totally. And twice as many. So probably just in pure viewership, twice as many as the convention speech. So, and that was pretty big. So this really, but I agree then the clips and all that. So I would continue to, use that for as long as possible. Honestly, I don't think you want to step on your own momentum, as it were. Right. And then I think, you had a good piece about how she really needed to be out there before the debate. I guess I'd say the way in which she should be out there, I'm not so sure she should be giving 1 million interviews, though. I think that's risky. Then you get one clunky answer to a question. Suddenly that's the story. And it's, well, she had an interview with Caitlin Collins. She didn't do a good job on this question. Who needs that, honestly? She should give give some speeches. You control the speeches. You take some questions. You do your foreign policy speech at Georgetown, your economic policy speech at the Detroit Economic Club. You fill in some of the gaps. You do it exactly in the terms you want, but then you're accessible. You talk about it afterwards. And I think just doing the interviews without that leaves you a little exposed. You haven't laid the predicate in a way. And this is something that normally candidates do in the primary season, but she didn't have a primary season, which is both an advantage of hers, obviously, but also in this respect, a disadvantage. I just did this conversation with Carville that'll be out tomorrow, a conversation with Bill Kristol thing. And we were sort of talking about this. and I'm stealing mostly his ideas here. But one thing he mentioned, or maybe I did, is that so a week from now, I think it's a week from today, I guess, the Fed's going to cut interest rates. And there is evidence that the people's economic sense is a little better than it was. Inflation's down. They feel a little better about things. Not a bad time to give your big economic policy speech at, Chicago or Detroit. I guess not Chicago. It's not a swing state, but whatever, the Detroit Economic Club or Pittsburgh or someplace, maybe on the 19th or 20th of next week. And, I think she, which again would sort of carry some of the themes forward from the debate, but also deepen the economic middle class message, the forward looking message, a little more liberation from being Harris-Biden to Biden to Harris's, from being Biden-Harris to Harris's own vision. So that I guess would be my sense. I don't know that she needs to be frantic at all, but she, as I say, riding this wave as long as you can would be a good idea. And then we get the October 1st debate with Vance. I don't know. Do you think there will be a second debate?
Doesn't sound like Trump wants it.
But I don't know if he's behind. Doesn't he have to? And she can't really say no, I suppose, right? I'm kind of thinking there might be. I don't.
Oh no, she. Apparently, her campaign last night asked for another one.
Yeah, but they won't do Fox. There'll be a lot of debate about the debates, which I think is a good thing for this simple reason. Debate about the debates, which is normally boring and only interesting to insiders like us. Debate about the debates will remind everyone about the last debate. If the word debate is used a lot in the campaign for the next 3 or 4 weeks, that's a good thing. So I kind of think that takes you a little bit, for weeks, not days, in a sense, the combination of riding the wave of this debate, debating whether there'll be a next debate, a speech or two to follow up on themes in this debate. And I think that could put her in pretty good shape, I think.
So my recommendation about her going out and doing a media blitz is not that she wouldn't be doing rallies and speeches. I'm assuming she's going to be doing that every other day. I just meant it is time for her to jump on podcasts, call into local radio in rural areas. Just pop up in weird places and seem like you're accessible and keep answering those questions about the child tax credit and the small business deductions and all the stuff she's trying to get across, because it requires repetition and she needs to look like she trusts her stuff and she's accessible, that she's not hiding to the very few people that we're talking about that are still undecided. And I do believe that after last week being holed up in Pittsburgh in a hotel and delivering what she did last night, she's ready for those interviews. You divert the question. You say, you know what? You use Donald Trump's filibuster techniques. I mean, you don't, in the end, she can be in control and she can say, you know what really matters to me, Rachel? You answer some and then you answer what you want to answer. And I think that she's ready. I mean, she's prepared so much for every single obstacle in terms of gotcha questions, policy liabilities, whatever it is. She's ready for the question about Joe Biden's cognitive, state, whatever. She's ready. So I just think it's time for her to kind of be out there and be more familiar for the remaining people who are undecided after last night. And I'm with you, ride the wave. I just figured that she'd be at all those rallies with the big crowds anyway. And that if you stop and you talk to the reporters on the way out, there was an interesting moment with NBC the night that she left her convention speech and she was in the tunnel, the wherever when you exit, when you're in an arena, when you're in one of those back halls. And it was Peter Alexander from NBC. And she said, hey, and they were like, oh, congratulations. She literally had just given the speech. And you could tell she was thinking about the debate. They were like, oh, how did it go? She goes, good, but we're on to the next thing.
What did it feel like in that moment?
It felt good. I mean, listen, we've got 75 days to go. So that was good. And now we got to move on.
Yeah, what to do.
And she had already started preparing for the debate. So it was just, she was willing to stop, take a question. I think those are other opportunities. You have to be a sit down interview with Caitlin Collins, right? It can be a little here, a little there, but you get it out in the media and you just show that you're answering questions, that you're confident in your answers. And I think that he's going to be everywhere and he's going to create a scene in the next few days to try to divert away from the debate debacle. And, I don't want any more where's Kamala. I want her out there, confident, competent, capable, like she was last night. And I think she's ready for those interviews now.
I'd be a tick more cautious on the interviews still. And I think I think the Where's Kamala stuff is just a media story and doesn't go anywhere. And she can do it. They have enough money to do an unbelievable amount of paid advertising, obviously, that will answer some of these questions as well. So, but I don't disagree. I mean, I agree. Some of the informal stuff, the local radio, the chit-chatting when she hugged that woman in that spice store, whatever it was, in Pittsburgh.
Oh, it's going to be good. We're going to be good. We're going to be fine. We're going to be fine. We are all in this together.
Yes, we are.
We're going to be fine.
We are.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Huh?
Yeah.
Did you get some spices?
Oh, absolutely.
I think the advantage of the formal speeches, which, again, people don't watch them exactly, and they're kind of for the media, but they do give something for people to write the op-eds about, and no one can say she hasn't worked out her proposal on the child tax credit on the one hand, or something like tariffs is complicated, and I think she did a pretty good job criticizing that last night, but I don't know that it actually clicked. I mean, I think the Trump sales tax is a too clever by half formulation. No one even understands what she's talking about when she says that. I think you do need to actually lay out how damaging tariffs would be and try to take the edge again off Trump on the economic issue. Where he still has an edge, I think, is having presided over a good economy and being a businessman and all that stuff. So again, I think this can be done in a very tactical and pretty targeted way in a whole bunch of different issues, not just economics, but other issues as well. The other thing I would say is I do think also that you do want to capitalize on your best issues. And I think listening to last night, I don't know what you thought, Dobbs, Roe, reproductive rights. I mean, that stuff is very powerful, and she was strong on it, and he is just flustered on it, and they are nervous. They can't answer. They don't want to say he will veto such a bill if there's a Republican president, Republican Congress, and they pass a national, anti-choice, pro-life bill. Would he veto it? And he won't say. And Vance is in a slightly different position than Trump is, and Trump kind of threw Vance under the bus, last night.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't.
That's maybe more of a paid advertising thing, but I think really capitalizing on the positive issues is very important too.
Yeah, it's really important to get, for the people who didn't see the debate, to make sure that Americans know that he refused to say he would veto a national abortion ban. He refused to say he wanted Ukraine to win.
It is well known that he said of Putin that he can do whatever the hell he wants and go into Ukraine. It is well known that he said when Russia went into Ukraine, it was brilliant. It is well known he exchanged love letters with Kim Jong-un. And it is absolutely well known that these dictators and autocrats are rooting for you to be president again because they're so clear they can manipulate you with flattery and favors. And that is why so many military leaders who you have worked with have told me you are a disgrace.
Do you want Ukraine to win this war?
I want the war to stop. I want to save lives that are being people being killed by the millions. It's the millions. It's so much worse than the numbers that you're getting, which are fake numbers.
Time is up. Just to clarify in the question, do you believe it's in the U.S. best interest for Ukraine to win this war, yes or no?
I think it's the U.S. best interest to get this war finished and just get it done.
All right.
I mean, she backed him into two very significant corners. It was really remarkable. That's a war that's dying to be settled. I mean, it was so clear that he just wants to end it. It was so clear he would give so much up to Putin. It was really painful to listen to. And so I agree that they have to today they're tired. They have to reset and regroup and think, what are we going to ride from this? And the abortion obviously is it, but so was the Ukraine stuff. I mean, it was very telling, and also just how out of it he was. I mean, there are tons of, at times he was deeply, deeply incoherent, and there's just tons of sound of him. When he brought up the Haitian immigrants, the conspiracy about them eating pets in Springfield, Ohio, he said, "I saw it on television." I mean, he didn't see it on television. It wasn't on television, or he saw someone on Fox talking about it, but it wasn't true. I mean, he was such a he was such a lunatic. And I think I'm sorry, that's what travels. And the reason I bring up the interviews is that I think if she gives a clunker, it just is washed out in the media cycle. You just give a good one the next day, or Trump says something crazy and everyone moves on. But I feel like the interviews travel further to people who don't follow politics. And I wonder how much they're getting, the rally speech clips, that type of thing about policy. But I really want to emphasize, and you guys wrote about this in Morning Shots today. I mean, he not only he didn't put in the work, and he gave a bad debate, but he really like stepped on multiple rakes and then ate them. It was painful to watch, and it should be exploited.
Hillary defeated him, as you say, in the actual debate in 2016, especially the first one, though. He may have defeated her in optics and all that, and bullying and so forth. And she didn't quite, she sort of was too much of a policy wonk and not enough of "I'm with you" kind of thing. You're with her. That was the disastrous campaign slogan. I remember at the Republican convention in 2016 when Trump turned that against her. She says, "You're with her." I say, "I'm with you." I mean, it was such an unbelievable mistake of the Hillary people to go in that, be with her direction. Harris has internalized that was a mistake and isn't going in that direction. But, one point Carville made, again, this will be up in 24 hours, but is calendar matters so much in campaigns. And we were discussing the Fed briefly, but just thinking about the abortion issue. I mean, we have a Supreme Court term beginning, when is it usually, the first week or second week of October, right? And so, there's your Supreme Court speech to give, right? And remind people, which, how fundamentally important it is that not just the appointments Trump made in his first term, but whether Trump or Harris makes 4 years worth of Supreme Court and lower court appointments in the next 4 years in terms of a million issues, including other aspects of reproductive rights and freedoms. So, I just think, sort of think about the calendar. There are pretty good occasions for her to hit a lot of these big issues and do so in a combination of speeches and interviews and so forth. And then if there's a second debate, I guess the October 1st, the VP debate, which I suppose will happen, will be October 1st. There'll be some interest, I think, because Vance is such an odd character.
Oh, definitely.
Don't you think? A little more than the usual interest, I think. And then I wonder I don't know. I really don't know even whether I want there to be another debate or not. It seems like she's done so well in this one. Maybe one and done would be good, but it'd be hard to avoid it if Trump sort of says yes and it's not, some ridiculous, only if it's moderated by, Tucker Carlson or something. So I guess we could get one more in October. That will be another chance for us to get nervous again. But for now, I slept well last night. I want to report that.
I know. For now, we can count on Trump to, try to get the Republicans to shut the government down, and we'll probably have a good next 10 days, but or 2 weeks. But I'm with you. He did say this morning, only the loser calls for the next debate. So that was interesting that he said that. For him to revert now would be interesting. But Hillary, as a reminder, Bill, we're going to stay nervous. She, I think, won 3 debates, and after Access Hollywood, still lost to Donald Trump. So let's stay nervous. Thank you, Bill. Everyone, thank you for joining us today, and make sure to stay on the Bulwark's YouTube channel, where we have stuff all day long in this very exciting time. Thank you so much, and we will see you next time.